Seerfest 2020. Excited to be here. My name is Cory Henke from Variable Media, and we're going to talk a little bit of Power BI, D2C, and media buying here in 2020. So let's get started. First, in an introduction and understanding, we'll discuss what Power BI is. Next, we'll talk about media buying in 2020, and then we'll look at 4 different case studies where we save time through automation. We gain client confidence through data optimization within Facebook. We do a little bit of audience development within YouTube, which I'm super excited to explore. And then also gather key data insight from Shopify's first-party data. So what is Power BI, right? Most people think it looks something like this. And while this is very complicated, complicated things can be simplified. And so Power BI is a very complicated too. The last 2 words at the end of Power are business intelligence, a business intelligence tool that competes with many others out there that people probably know better. But for us as marketers and advertisers, we feel that it is one of the biggest advantages when it comes to media buying. Now, how I see Power BI is just a little bit different. It is where you combine the tools of Excel with the power of PowerPoint, and then again, you get Power BI. So when you have Excel, you have this numbers inside of the cell. And what have we done for years? We've taken those numbers, we've pivot tabled them, we've optimized them, we've created charts and graphs, we put them in a PowerPoint, added text. And that's how we've delivered information. We believe that there's a better tool today that helps change all this. It helps change the discussion and advances our industry like we've never seen before. So let's discuss what media buying looks like in 2020. The first thing that I want to show you is the DTC Duopoly Starter Kit. For every D2C brand that we've run across, either in e-commerce, a client that we currently manage, an audit that we've done, they usually have some combination of the 7 platforms that you see here. Now, within these 7 platforms, you have the ability to buy across a huge audience. But when you decide to scale, how many more platforms do you add on? And even within this starter kit, you might have a LinkedIn and Amazon ads to go in addition to a combination of these platforms. But you usually start here, and this still is a very complicated complicated area to navigate within media buying. So when we think about media buying, what is the process? The process is difficult. It's real time, it's 24/7, and like I mentioned with all those different platforms, it's consistent and constant learning. There's multiple user interfaces and platforms that we need to navigate through each and every single day. We have to segment these audiences. We have different creative for each of these platforms and each of these placements. Our testing, our analyzing, and especially the client education that needs to be done to really maximize our performance is all a part of a media buyer's journey every single day, every single week. So what happens when you have success as a media buyer or success as a company? You move out of the starter kit, and now you have all these additional self-service platforms. And so again, I asked the question to many of the marketers, the advertisers, the media buyers out there, what do you do? Do you begin to hire more media buyers? Do you go get a tool that then aggregates all this data? This is a lot of work for maybe 1 person or 2 people on a team. And so what we have found is that when we leverage Power BI to really, aggregate this information, we can solve problems, analyze, as well as come up with solutions that we weren't necessarily going to get inside one of these UIs. So this is a usual media buyer. How do we manage it all? This is our process, right? We take these platforms, we put them into Power BI, and then we visualize the data. It helps us understand what is going on, and it saves us time at the same time. So having a good understanding of Power BI and media buying in 2020, let's go ahead and see how this all works together. So in this first case study, we will look at how to save time through automation and visualization. And this was the first time that I was able to really turn an idea into a reality and aggregate all of these platforms. And I think what I found most interesting was bringing the Google Analytics and the web behavior and combining it with the paid media behavior. And so we'll look across about 5 different UIs, 10 different platforms, and across 3 different countries. But this is more for a larger advertiser, I think, this case study. So let's dive in. Now, on this screen, before we go look at the dashboard, I just want to show you what we're going to be looking at. On the bottom, you will get a table with the regions and a comparison. In this comparison of the regions, what you will find is that you have your ad costs, your impressions, your views, your clicks, your CPM, your CPC, which is your cost per click, your conversions, your CPA, your cost per acquisition, what it takes to acquire a customer, your revenue, as well as your return on ad spend in the last column. To the left, you will see ad cost by region, return on ad spend by region. To the right, you will see ad cost by platform and return on ad spend by platform. And in the middle here, we will begin to understand how our regions work across both ad return on ad spend and then site return on ad spend. Okay, moving into this example dashboard of a client that is running across 3 different regions. And as I mentioned, you had your ad cost and return on ad spend by region to your left, and your ad cost and return on ad spend by platform to your right. What I love about these dashboards is being able to filter. And so, again, if I just focus on the United States, I get a good understanding of the return on ad spend over a period of time. If I just want to focus on the last 3 months, I can. I can drop this down and I can look at the platforms and their performance all right here next to each other. It's a great way to understand where you're spending the bulk of the dollars, but also what other platforms are adding value, especially from an impression standpoint, due to that CPM, which is what we usually see on something like a Snapchat. But I think better than that is that when you bring all these platforms together, being able to just focus on Canada, Australia with 2 clicks of a button, being able to look at Facebook ads across all 3 different regions, compare the CPMs, the CPCs. This, I think, is probably one of the biggest advantages to Power BI that there is. So, definitely something to keep in mind. But, with just this example, you can see 3, 6, 9, we're going across 12 different platforms and 3 different regions. Now, one of the things that we really enjoy to do, especially with Power BI, is combine different types of data. And so on this chart, what you're looking at is Google Analytics data as well as paid media data. And so here, when we're looking at new visitor versus returning visitor revenue, that is coming from Google Analytics, as well as the new visitor versus returning users spread across by month. And then we have the site return on ad spend, taking the site revenue and then dividing it by the ad cost coming from the platforms. And then to the right, this also gives you ad cost by platform to give you a great allocation. But then also you can see the user type, the new visitor versus returning by week. We find that this relationship between new visitor and returning visitor is so important, especially when growing a brand. But let me show you also how you can find trends very easily. If we decided to look at the last, let's say 3 months, actually, let's go back to 9 real quick and let's see that returning usually makes up a little bit more than, double that of new visitors. But how does it, look at just 3 months? Oh, wow, it's close to triple that, almost triple that. Something has changed. And so you can easily drop down and see the allocation of new visitors versus returning visitors, the percentages, by week. And if you wanted to just get real granular to say maybe, why are we only dealing with a 4-to-1 in that last week, right? Well, let's show the next level, and look at it by day. And you can literally get down into the ebbs and flows of the data. And this is where we find the ability to find trends and figure out new things for clients. But ultimately, a great tool when looking at potentially, one region or, one platform and comparing it to, the Google Analytics data. And then lastly, what we find is a true advantage and what we think can really save time through automation is being able to tier your platforms. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look across 6 different UIs here. Facebook Ads UI, the Google Ads UI, the Bing Ads UI, the Amazon UI, Pinterest UI, and the Snapchat UI. But what my team and I discovered with this presentation is the fact that we're able to, create these tiers ourselves, right? Like if I just focus on tier 1, we can see that, we have about 9 different platforms. The bulk of it is landing between Instagram and Facebook at the top, followed by Google search. We have the, performance here to the right. But we can also look at tier 2 and see the evolution and the growth and the trust that the client has given us to be able to spend more against these up and coming platforms. I think another thing that the team also showed was that, we can separate these categories any way that we want. If we just want to focus on social, we can tier things, into social. What is social within Google Ads? Well, that's YouTube. What about Facebook? Well, that's Facebook and Instagram. Makes sense. Well, what about display? Well, now we're comparing Amazon, Snapchat, and Google Ads. Well, what about search? Well, Google Ads and Bing Ads. What about shopping? Right? Google Ads and Bing Ads. So again, great comparisons for the entire team. And you can also do, if we wanted to just look at Snapchat versus Pinterest, we could have that fair comparison if those were two, testing platforms entering into March and May. So huge opportunities to be able to tier and structure your platforms to be able to analyze the data. Back to the presentation. I think one of the things we see as media buyers, and if there's anybody watching, big shout out to you, is that we have to navigate through these platforms, if not every day, every other day. And it's not the funnest experience, to be honest. And so any help that we can get to save time so that we can focus on, things, learning new things, maximizing the profitability or the KPIs is just, an ultimate benefit. But this is only going to get more difficult, in my opinion, just because so many platforms have gone self-service at this point. So we will see where the industry lands, but ultimately I hope that helps you understand that, you can save time through a tool that can aggregate data very easily. Now, this next case study is how you gain client confidence through data. And this is a current client of ours, Golden Coil, goldencoil.com. That's a plug for them. Great custom planner company. They're in the e-commerce category. And I want to show you their first 7 weeks in 2018 of working with us and how we were able to really not only drive performance for them, but to tell the story through data and Power BI. So in this dashboard, what I want to show you is that on the left gives you the allocation between Facebook and Instagram. To the right gives you the allocation of the funnel, top, mid, and low, as well as the return on ad spend. The top being any new user, interest in behavior, lookalike, the mid being anybody who's engaged with our brand, and then the low being anybody who had visited our website. All right, in this media buying adventure, what I want to show you is the first 7 weeks in working with the brand Golden Coil and how we really optimize to drive not only return on ad spend and conversions, but also reach as many people as possible and really brand their company. So first, as we look into the first week of delivery, and into the first week, what do we always do? We try to keep things as even as possible, give everything, their fair run. What we can see is the system forced us into 66% Facebook, 34% Instagram, with 69% here in the top funnel. But what we can see is that Instagram at $362, making up, 30-40% of the delivery, had a much lower CPM in comparison and a much lower CPC, but a higher return on ad spend. And so with that, it triggers us to go, okay, let's spend a little bit more there. And so into week 42, we go 55% Instagram, with the majority over there. And what do we see? We've spent $1,000 over there, very close to about Facebook, but our CPM is 4.7 versus 18.9, having a lot to do with our stories. 30 cents versus $2, a lot to do with our stories. And we still have the best return on ad spend for stories. But how is that possible with a 1% conversion rate? Well, it's because our CPM and our CPC are so low. And if you think about Q4 of 2018, it's when stories just launched. Very few people were taking advantage of it. It was really, the romance season. But these stories also had one of the lowest cost per add to carts too as well. So very advantageous to be running stories. And so in seeing this, we doubled down. And we said in week 43, we're going to spend twice that amount. 747,000 impressions at a $3 CPM, which remained unchanged week over week with double the amount of spend, a $2 CPC, and our conversion rate at 1.2%, staying above a 3-to-1, and still with a 70% allocation in our top funnel. We are 78% on Instagram. Now you can see that the budget doubles. And in doing so, we committed 94% to Instagram, still under a $3 CPM. Our CPCs rose slightly, but again, it came down to the impression and the click volume that I absolutely needed. And I was willing to take the lower return on ad spend to help this brand grow, especially before the holiday and into Q1, where they usually have their bigger season, being a custom planner. Into the following weeks, you really see us, back off of that allocation and really find the right media mix at that 70%. And then into week 47, really trying to, probably push out a little bit more, retargeting, as we've been able to capture a large swath of users within week 41 to 46. As we come back to the presentation, what we have found is that, when we're inside these user interfaces like Facebook and Google, they're just great ways to buy media, not necessarily to analyze it or to better yet, to visualize it, to really see it. And so what I'm showing you to the left is how Facebook, the UI, wants you to analyze the newsfeed, the marketplace, and some of their placements. And it is just atrocious the way that they, want you to dive through all this data, and ultimately it forces you to pull it out and look at it in an Excel. And what we say is that why not open up, something like Power BI and have all this stuff manipulated for you so that you can easily understand, what's going on. Like in the example where I filter for stories and really show the advancement, of that CPM over time, as well as that CPC and how low it stayed in comparison to both the Instagram newsfeed as well as the Facebook newsfeed. But let's continue to have some more fun. This next section, we're going to now look at YouTube, which again is very close to home for me. I am a big, proponent of YouTube. I've been working with it for a very long time, and I'm really excited to share this case study. Is how do you develop audience profiles with your YouTube data? And so we will look at analyzing bid strategy, which is always a question I get on YouTube, but also demographics, as well as placement, which is really fun. And then hopefully with the data, let's see if we can hone in on an audience. So in this next example, we will look at different types of placements, as you see to the right. And these placements come either on a YouTube channel, a website, or potentially like a mobile application. And it's such a great way to know what video your ad ran in front of. And you can kind of think it's similar to like, the search keyword report or the search terms report, where you're able to understand what somebody searched for. This is what the video they were watching, what they wanted to watch before your ad showed up and potentially converted them. But all the placements are, shown here to the right are placements that drove conversions, which is really interesting in terms of evaluating and honing in on user behavior. But let's jump in. The dashboard that we are looking at separates out our bid strategy by target CPA and maximize conversion. And you can also see the difference in the color here by maximize conversion and target CPA as well as our cost per acquisition, over time. And this is a question I always get, and I tell everybody when it comes to YouTube, this is probably your number one variable that you'll want to figure out first. And so when we compare these two through the year, we can easily see that target CPA is much more efficient. However, when we click on target CPA, we can see that the majority of dollars have been spent in retargeting, which we know works better. And so when we look at maximize conversions, you find 82% inside of prospecting, where it's like, okay, did we give it its fair shot? And so that's why it's amazing to be able to click the retargeting and to see how both of these compare. And we can easily see that target CPA does better at 1.7. But how does prospecting do when looking at each of these? You can see again, target CPA at 1.4 versus a 0.6. Again, does better. And so it makes sense why into September that we've seen such a drop with this much of an allocation pushed towards target CPA. But again, this is a great way to go ahead and compare your bid types because this is probably the most important variable. And what we've seen is that this conversion rate is usually like the linchpin for something like YouTube, especially if you're looking to drive conversions versus views and completions. And so having the right bid strategy is important, but what I think is probably the biggest secret inside of YouTube that I find like the most fascinating is their combination report. And so what that allows you to do is it allows you to combine male and female, age, which would be age and gender, but also household income and parental status. And so when clients are like, hey, I'm not getting the results I'm needing from, from YouTube, what should I do? Like, what is it? Is it the prospecting? Yeah, at 108, I'd rather it be much lower, right? And so by just clicking on the prospecting, I had now have a good understanding of all these different variables, how it's performing. And so the first thing that I see is that there's a bit of a gap between parent versus non-parent. And so again, let's remember this $108 sign right here, because that's our standard average prospecting CPA through the year. But if I focus on just parents and remove non-parents, I'm down to 100. And then if I go top 10%, I'm down to 83. And then if I focus just on 25 to 44, I'm down to 78. I've improved our cost per acquisition by more than 25% by just honing in on parent, top 10%, and 25 to 44. And if we took it a bit further and just focused on males as well, we're down to 72. And so this is a great way to segment for performance. Now, you might get caught in an issue where there might not be enough scale, but at the same time, this is still a great way to eke out some performance. And knowing most advertisers, especially when they're getting into YouTube, is they're just testing YouTube. And so it's not necessarily a scale issue. And the same thing can be done for retargeting. If you focused on retargeting, you went with the parent that had a little bit of a wider margin versus non-parent, your top, 10, 11, 12, 30%. And then when it comes to age, I'd probably leave that open, because it's doing well across the board. But you can do the same thing with retargeting as well. And then lastly, when we think about the placement, this is like probably one of the coolest things that YouTube allows you to do. There's a lot of consumer research in here, is our ability to look at just YouTube channels. Alpha Male, The Daily Show, Fox News, MSNBC. This helps build the character of who your potential consumer is, because they all converted and bought one of your products prior to watching one of these shows. And you can also see when they converted from a website or YouTube embedded on a website, and what websites they were watching or what websites they were on. Again, a key insight into a user. You also have mobile application as well. It usually comes out with much less conversions and gives you less to analyze. Being able to break this out by prospecting as well as retargeting also gives you additional insight into what users are viewing early on in the stage of purchase versus I've already gotten to know you, here's what's going to push me over the edge. As we come back to the presentation, and as I showed on the previous slide, there were a lot of different channels as well as websites and apps that helped us create this customer. And what this not only does, and what I've always thought about YouTube, is that if we focused on the best for prospecting, if we focused on the best for retargeting, we could drive performance. But what's hidden inside of YouTube, in my opinion, is finding some of the best influencers that you could partner with, better understanding your consumer, because they watch news on websites, but they come to YouTube to watch their favorite influencer, right? Like those type of insights, I think, are crucial to understanding more about your consumer and selling them more product at the end of the day. But it's not over yet. I think you can learn so much from first-party data as well. And I'm super excited to show you the next dashboards, because these are probably the ones that get our clients most excited. They're the ones that, really get our clients. And I think it's because clients like to see their own data, and us data and media buyer guys love to see, performance and revenue. But ultimately, they've called a lot of our dashboards what Shopify doesn't deliver for them. So excited to show you. Here's one of them. Before we jump into the dashboard, I just want to explain it to you real quick. You have your calendar on the left. You have date and search on the top right. You have the date, you have the event type, the event details, what happened on that day, the amount of new users that came to the website that day, the revenue. And then when you look at your first time customer versus your returning customer, very different from like new user versus returning user. This is now first time customer versus returning customer. And then the event type, and then also your product type versus your first time and returning customer. Before we look at the calendar, what I want to show you is just a product overview. And just simply, this is how we view products. If we take this, advertiser who's obviously selling, let's say, men's clothing, pants, graphic tees, accessories. If we wanted to focus on, the number one product we could. And we could also focus on graphic t-shirts. We can combine them. We could show shirts and shorts together, right? Sweaters and graphic tees, a combination of things. But ultimately, we can also silo in on just like the last 3 months, take this down to the weekly level, and begin to really see, potentially how our accessories did. And what are some of these anomalies where sunglasses popped in week 17, but sunglasses also popped in week 38. But while this is all great, and while this all gives us, a great amount of intel into understanding, how products work over, a 9-month period, we believe that the single month view is extremely powerful in understanding like what's going on like right now. And so as we look in July, if we wanted to, let's say, move to August and go, oh, wow, what happened on the 10th? We could easily see that it was primarily pants and graphic tees coming mostly from, returning consumers, making up over, potentially 75% of the revenue, but it was a super discount we did. And it was 50% off the store, with 77% returning, 23% first time. Now, if we also wanted to look like, well, where did first time really happen? That same day drove the most revenue. What about returning? Those 2 big days. What happened on this Thursday? Well, we released reflective joggers. Perfect. It's a great way to understand information. And I think another thing that we can do is we can look at, let's say, launches, restocks, and like the super discount, and be able to see them and be able to see what they drove in terms of products. Skinny and slim jeans, right? Like, how did those 2 products do over time, right? You can see their biggest day again on this Monday. But while this is great, our clients gave us feedback on this, and they said, well, Cory, we want a 3-month view. And I said, let's do it. It's a really, really, really good look at how things are moving over time. And I think where this gets special is being able to go to something like the event type and focus on just influencer Monday sales, and be able to see that, like, okay, our biggest day happened in September. Who was that? Okay, that was, Ryan Styles NYC. Boom, like that's our number one. Did more from a returning perspective. But if you even kept it there and said, how about first time consumers from just influencers? Which one was the highest? Again, Ryan Styles on the 14th. Now, while that's all well and good, I think another great aspect of this is also being able to do search features. Like if we search just for jeans, and we can see that that's all in the pants category. And so how about jeans for just first-time customers, right? Like, when does that really pop? But also, what type of jeans? And so being able to show the next level and see skinny jeans over time, slim jeans, and biker jeans. All different ways that you can, source and categorize. But a great tool nonetheless, I think, for brands as well as marketers to understand best performing products, what sales, what launches did the best, what offers, being able to, just sort for free shipping on 7.3, and to see that allocation, to understand that like 42% was the average for first time customers, but when you do free shipping, it moves to 50%. I mean, that type of intel I think is huge, but ultimately this is one that definitely helps our brands. Awesome. And back to the presentation. Yeah, just one more slide for everybody to close it out. I think for any direct-to-consumer brand, media buyer, CEO, if you're watching this presentation, what I can say is that I hope you understand that Power BI can be a useful tool, for marketers and advertisers. With media buying, with Power BI, we can uncover new insights and with data visualization that we couldn't necessarily do before. And that, I think, is the secret, is that we have something that is unique. We have something that is going to require, a new skill set to be able to drive performance. And, we see it with our clients today. And then lastly, I think the data that comes from advertising and marketing is the best, just because there's so much consumer insights attached to it. We understand consumer behavior as well as drive performance to reach, revenue heights for these brands they never thought they could see. So I'm going to continue having fun. But for everybody here at Seerfest 2020, thank you, Seer Interactive, for the invite. I hope everybody has a good day, and I appreciate everybody's time. Thank you.